Welcome back. Welcome back. This is the People's Voice. I am Trey Evans, and I am the People's Voice. Thank you again for checking out the podcast this week. As always, it is greatly appreciated. As always, we thank everyone who has taken some time to listen to the podcast today. We do understand that you could be utilizing your time to do something else, so we are appreciative of you utilizing that time to spend with us. As always, if this information is valuable and you feel it to be enlightening, we do ask that you subscribe to this podcast and also turn on notifications. That way you'll be notified when each episode is released. We do put out a new episode each and every Friday, which is heard on all podcast platforms. And then we also put a video out on YouTube every Wednesday as well. Also, when you do subscribe, this helps us out because it notifies our distributors and also our YouTube channel and channel management that we are effective and that the information we are providing is valuable to you. And that way they extend our reach to other audiences. And so they too can receive this information. But in any event, we say thank you and welcome to the People's Voice podcast. Today I want to get into the topic about sports betting here in the United States. And I want to talk about this because there are, several reasons. Number one, we are in the midst here in the United States of the betting season, so to speak, because you have multiple sports going on at one time. Currently, you have the NBA, and they're going through their playoff and championship rounds. You have the NHL going through their playoff and championship rounds. Major League Baseball has started back. And then, of course, you have the Olympics coming up this summer. So this is a heavy betting season. And obviously, one of the biggest betting moments of the year was the Super Bowl a couple of months ago. And then we also had horse betting and horse racing here in the last couple of months. So a lot of bets are going out on sports, during this stretch here. So I want to talk about sports betting. Specifically, I want to talk about it, from two different angles. First, I want to kind of talk about, the gambling disorder, which has been identified as a psychological or a mental condition, and kind of explain what that is. But I really wanted to talk about this because I read a story that was produced or published by the NCAA that talked about in terms of mental health, kind of the impact that sports betting was having on college players, right? On student athletes. And I think that conversation kind of is missed in the sports betting realm in terms of how sports betting is affecting the athletes that have to participate in these games. Because, like I said, the gambling addiction is a real thing, and I'll talk about that. But I think it's often missed that the individuals that perform in these jerseys and play for these teams are real individuals and human beings. And, they are very much accessible, especially with the invention of social media and phones, obviously, and apps and things of that nature. So I kind of wanted to tackle it from two different points. I wanted to talk about gambling disorder and kind of the increase of what that has looked like over the last couple of years here in the United States. And then also want to talk about this story that I saw that was published by the NCAA. So in this story, and I'm just going to pull it up here for those of you who are watching the YouTube, so you kind of see what I'm talking about. But in this story, the NCAA, or I should say in the study, the NCAA published a study to kind of look at, I should say, how to address the harassment that their student athletes have been enduring as a result of gamblers who bet on these games, and basically, obviously if they're losing, they personally attack these athletes. And again, we have to remember that these athletes, for the majority of them, and I'm just talking right now about student athletes, are young people, right? They're typically between the ages of, 17, 18, 23. These are young people who are receiving this level of harassment from individuals that they have no idea who these people are. But in this survey that was done, or in this analysis that was done, the NCAA, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, I'm just going to hit some of the highlights, but in their analysis, they say that 1 in 3 high-profile athletes have received abusive messages from someone with a betting interest. This means that there have been, individuals who have bet on games and basically have reached out to these athletes to tell them, how disappointed they were with the results. Matter of fact, I was reading a story on ESPN, and ESPN talked about an athlete on the men's basketball team, Armando Bacot, and he is a forward on the men's basketball team. And he told reporters that he received dozens, and I'm reading the story directly, he received dozens of direct messages on social media criticizing him for his performance in the Tar Heels win over Michigan State in the second round of the NCAA tournament. Now, here's the crazy thing. His team won the game, and he still received criticism. And the criticism had to do with his performance, because the crazy thing about this, and let me just be very clear, I don't bet on sports. So, just in case that's anybody was concerned, I don't bet on sports. That's not my thing. But in these sports betting apps, and I know this because obviously I know people who bet on sports, you cannot just bet on who's going to win. These individuals are betting on how many points the player will score, what time in the game they will score the points, how many points they'll have at the end of a half or a quarter. In the case of this athlete, Armando Bacot, he said he was being criticized because he didn't get enough rebounds. And again, this is in a game that his team won. His team won the game, and he still was getting criticized. And this is just a small portion of the level of harassment and abuse that these student athletes are receiving. He goes on to say here that he says, I guess I didn't get enough rebounds or something. I thought I played pretty good. Last game, but I looked at my DMs, direct messages for those who are older, and I got like over 100 messages from people telling me I sucked and stuff like that because I didn't get enough rebounds. Now, this is one story in thousands because there are thousands of student athletes that receive, or I should say play in these sports and have received this type of harassments. Going back to that study from the NCAA, it says here, as I read before, 1 in 3 high-profile athletes receive abusive messages. It goes on to say that 90% of the harassment was generated online or through social media. It says during March Madness, which was just a couple of months ago, it was uncovered that nearly 1,000 Division men and women basketball student athletes, during March Madness, their survey covered 1,000 Division men and women basketball student athletes, 64 teams, and 280 coaches and officials. It says out of the 54,000 posts and comments that were flagged for potential abuse or threats, 4,000 were confirmed as abusive or threatening and reported to, the social media platforms, with some of them being elevated to law enforcement. So that means that some of these threats were so vile and so basically threatening, or I should say so damaging, that it was reported to law enforcement as possibly being acted on by these individuals who are making these threats. The last thing I wanted to point out about this story here, and I thought this was, truly significant. It says that women basketball student athletes received approximately 3 times more threats than men's basketball student athletes. And this is in line with a lot of the data that I was reading in terms of athletes, in terms of the breakdown of athletes that receive these threats. More often than not, women are receiving the threats, especially those that get elevated into or up to the law enforcement level, because some of the comments are abusive. And I'm not going to repeat, because there was another story where they showed some of the messages online that were sent to some of these athletes. I'm not going to repeat those, and I'm not going to break that down, or I'm not going to show it on the screen either. But people are really, really sick, especially when it comes to those who have deep gambling addictions. Now, gambling addiction is a real thing. It is not a myth. It is not something that is, just word of mouth or things of that nature. I'm reading a article here from Forbes, and in this article, Forbes talks about gambling disorder. And this has been something that was diagnosed, or at least recognized, by the American Psychiatric Association and the American Medical Association, characterized by a preoccupation with wagers, not being able to cut down or stop gambling repeatedly beyond one's means, borrowing money to finance the habit, or chasing after losses by betting more. So this is a real, identified and recognized addiction and this mental disorder that has been recognized. And you take that definition and then you put it towards some of the threats that these athletes, and again, I'm just talking about student athletes. I didn't even get into the professional athletes, right? These threats that these athletes are receiving, you can then see where the level of concern comes from, because this is a mental disorder. This is not, just somebody mad at the game. In this article that I'm reading here from Forbes, it also breaks down about how many people have been identified as having a gambling problem. The issue of gambling disorder is hitting an all-time high. The National Council on Problem Gambling estimates that approximately 2.5 million adults in the U.S. are severely addicted to gambling.
Men lie, women lie, the numbers don't.
And then it goes on to say that another 4 to 6 million people have mild to moderate gambling problems.
Men lie, women lie, the numbers don't.
And so when I see that number, again, these are estimates. Okay, so these are not exact numbers, right? These are just estimates. But even in that number, I can almost guarantee that number is probably double what those numbers are reported, because again, these are people that have either participated in this survey or have, were able to be contacted. This has nothing to do with the people that don't want to participate in this survey or that they haven't covered. So I'm sure that number is definitely much higher than this reported. But in any event, this is increasingly becoming a bigger and bigger problem. And I talked a little bit about this last year when I talked about the gambling addiction amongst young people, which amongst teens to be exact, because those numbers are astronomically getting out of control and have increasingly gotten out of control year after year. This issue is occurring in the homes of individuals, and then it's leading into, even deeper issues, because now you have young people that are gambling on these games as well. Matter of fact, let me play this clip from the Boston Globe. Chris Sears, who's a reporter with the Boston Globe, he talked about this terminology. He talked about this terminology called signaling, and let me play what this is, and then I'll kind of close out from there to talk about where the money is going in regards to sports betting and who's actually benefiting from this. So let me play this from the Boston Globe.
Of parents.
That's a really great point. And one of the things that gaming researchers have been focused on is this issue of signaling. A lot of parents bet. A lot of adults are actually betting on pro sports games, and they're doing it in their homes. And that's signaling to their own kids that it's okay to do it, right? And so, that's a real concern. And what they're finding is there's this intergenerational dynamic going on where grandparents bet, their parents bet, and with the ease of these phones, now these kids are betting. Now, mind you, we did talk to some parents who don't bet, right?
And I am one of those parents for sure. But as he mentioned there, this issue becomes then intergenerational, right? Because if the child is in the home watching the parent bet, they think that this is okay, and then they bet as well. That's why I said that number is doubled, probably even, I even go further to say probably triple of what is being reported in terms of the number of adults that have been identified as having a gambling problem. And I talked about this a little bit last year when I did I did a podcast about teen gambling and the increase that has occurred as a result of online gambling and having more access via online sports betting from sports apps and things of that nature. Now, let's talk about the money, right? Because as you guys know, I like to talk about the money because everything is in the United States of America. So who's benefiting from this, right? Obviously, these companies, and I'm not going to name the companies, I don't even want to give them advertising, right? But the sports betting companies are making money, right? Especially those who develop these apps. But in addition to this ruling in 2018 that allowed for sports betting to become legal, as a result of this, many of these states are making big money. I'm reading a report here from the Motley Fool, and they did a report here because currently today sports betting is legal in 38 states and including the District of Columbia, which, prior to 2018, there were only 4 states that were allowed to conduct sports betting. But as of the ruling and as these states have made sports betting legal, they are making some huge dollars, right? So you have, and I'm not going to go through the entire list of all 38 states, but just for instance, Arizona, since September 2001, since they made sports betting online legal, they've made over $1 billion, they've made over $62 million in tax revenue. We go to Colorado, 58 million. Illinois, 336 million. Mississippi, one of the poorest states in the country, 33 million. You keep going down. The big winner here, New Jersey, 411 million. And then New York, and this number is just mind-blowing. In New York, went to legalized online betting in 2019. And this is, again, from the Motley Fool. They're saying that total tax revenue has been $1 almost $1.5 billion in tax revenue since 2019. And the list goes on and on and on. I point this out because even though we have all of these issues with student athletes being harassed, you have gambling addiction and gambling disorder, unfortunately, this train, as they say, is out of the station and it is not coming back. Because once you start to get this involved, the gambling disorders, the threats, it's null and void. And it's it's, you know, it's a sad state of affairs. I know there are people are listening and saying, "Oh, you're a Debbie Downer. Oh, just gambling." It's a little bit of, but it's not. And you know, for those who are dealing with gambling addiction, I encourage you to reach out and get help. There's not obviously, but there is the gambling hotline, which is 1-800-GAMBLER. That's 1-800-GAMBLER, 1-800-426-2537. You can also call the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration has a number. Their number is 1-800-662-HELP. That's 1-800-662-4357. There's in terms of giving, if you have an issue with gambling, you can call them for help as well. There's other treatments that can be provided. I don't want to get into the medical overview of treatments because this is not a medical podcast, but you can seek out support groups. There's also psychotherapy and things of that nature. But for that type of information, I would say reach out to a medical professional. But all in all, I wanted to provide this information because this is a serious issue and it needs to be on everyone's radar. And unfortunately, like I said, due to the amount of money that's being made, it's really fearful about where this is going to go in terms of our society as a whole, as you have the addiction growing and then you have younger and younger individuals participating in this. But the first action is always to equip ourselves with information to see how we can deal with this, obviously on a individual basis. And that's the best way to do it, because you might have someone in your home that's going through these or experiencing this, and this may be the platform to help that individual, he or she, get over this. So, but that's my time for today. I want to get this on everyone's radar. I came across this story and I thought it was interesting. So I wanted to kind of put it out there. As always, if this information is valuable and you want to leave a comment, you can reach us at the People's Voice Podcast on Instagram, or you can reach us, or you can reach me on any of the social media platforms at I am Trey Evans on all social media platforms and YouTube as well. But that's my time for today. So I hope this information was valuable. As always, dreams are not just for sleeping. Please wake up and live your dreams. My name is Trey Evans, the People's Voice. Tell somebody about the dream. Salute.